Straight ahead on Law&Crime Daily. Defense attorneys for a former girlfriend charged in the murder of a missing mother want charges dismissed. The latest on the search for Jennifer Dulos. How the FBI tracked down a suspect in the Capitol riots wanted for assaulting a police officer trapped between doors. And a Nevada court overturns the conviction of a man for the murders of his wife and a hired hitman. Why he's demanding a speedy trial.
I want it done now.
Plus, the Iowa Supreme Court hears arguments in the $10 million judgment of a farmer found liable in his mother's death. Our experts break down the father versus son saga.
And we would ask that this court reverse and remand this case for trial.
Brian Buckmire along with Terri Austin. Days after police search again for the body of a missing mother, her husband's former girlfriend wants her own charges thrown out. Jennifer Dulos was reported missing in May 2019 after dropping her kids off in Connecticut. Police became suspicious and then arrested her husband, Photos Dulos, along with his girlfriend, Michelle Troconis, and friend, Kent Mohini. Photos Dulos died last January of an apparent suicide. Troconis and Mohini each pled not guilty to conspiracy to commit murder. Troconis is also facing charges of evidence tampering. Jennifer Dulos' body has yet to be recovered, but state police were out at a property this week searching for clues to her disappearance. A bone-finding expert was seen using ground-penetrating radar to search for possible remains at a home in Farmington that was owned by Photos Dulos' company.
Our main goal is to, again, work towards providing the family of Jennifer Dulos some closure, and our detectives will continue to work tirelessly.
After the search, an attorney for Michelle Troconis filed a motion to dismiss the evidence tampering charges. Defense attorney John Scohorn claims Troconis' arrest warrant contained false statements and omitted facts.
Michelle is innocent of these charges, and we plan to fight them through the courts.
Investigators said in the warrant that around the time Jennifer was reported missing, Photos Dulos and Troconis stopped 30 times along a busy street in Hartford to dump garbage bags. Police recovered some of the bags, which reportedly contained Jennifer's blood and clothing. According to the motion, video shows they only stopped 3 times. Also submitted a photo of Mohini at a meeting with police over the summer and calls him a jailhouse informant. Now, Troconis' defense is moving for sanctions against the state. She's currently out of jail on a $2 million bond and must wear an ankle monitoring device. She's due back in court on February 2nd. Joining us is New York City Public Defender Anna Carlsen and Terri Austin. Anna, you're familiar with sketchy arrest warrants. What do you make of the defense's motion?
So, Brian, there was really a lot going into this original arrest warrant. I took a quick look at it. It's a 35-page arrest warrant, and it's filled with detail. He'll have a lot to overcome, including this arrest warrant. There's an allegation that they're driving through the city, dropping off bags. That arrest warrant also contains references to DNA found on the bags. I think one real problem that he needs to address squarely is there's an allegation that Michelle Troconis' DNA was found on one of the garbage bags that you can see being dropped off at one of these locations. So when they actually did swab those bags, it's not just that she was along for the ride. Some of the video shows her present in the passenger seat of this car or of this pickup truck. It's more than that. It's that the arrest warrant contains evidence that she actually did touch some of these plastic bags.
Yeah, it's going to be hard to overcome. Terri, the question is this enough to dismiss the charges or for sanctions to be handed down, though?
I don't think so, Brian. I agree with Anna. I mean, there were some problems in the arrest warrant, but they weren't significant enough to dismiss the case or to impose sanctions. You know, under the Fourth Amendment, obviously, there must be probable cause to issue this arrest warrant. And the courts usually find that probable cause is there when there's a reasonable basis for believing that a crime was committed. We have a reasonable basis here. There's no question that she was in that car. There's no question that she was along for the ride. It doesn't matter if it was 3 stops or 30 stops. They stopped a lot. Maybe they stopped at streetlights. So I think that the arrest will be, maintained, and I don't think there'll be sanctions.
So some discrepancies, but maybe not enough to win the day. Federal authorities continue to make arrests in the storming of the U.S. Capitol building. The FBI says Patrick McCaughey III is the man seen here on video as the mob forced its way through the front doors, crushing a police officer. McCaughey was taken into custody in New York on charges of assaulting an officer, civil disorder, entering a restricted building, and violent entry. According to court documents, McCaughey ripped off the officer's gas mask, exposing his bloodied mouth. He's then accused of using a riot shield to push against the officer. A childhood acquaintance reportedly identified McCaughey to the FBI.
Police in New York City say they've arrested a man believed to be behind a series of murders that targeted older women. 82-year-old Myrtle McKinney was found dead from a stab wound in 2015. Then in 2019, in the same senior housing development, 83-year-old Jacola James was found dead with highly suspicious injuries. And just 1 week ago, a third woman, 78-year-old Juanita Caballero, was found dead with a telephone cord around her neck. Police say forensic evidence links Kevin Gavin, a neighbor, to the homicides.
Mr. Gavin was familiar with many of the residents in the building and ran errands for some of the elderly tenants who resided at that location.
These women who are beloved mothers and grandmothers and neighbors, the fear that has existed in the Woodson houses regarding what's happening there. I am confident that we have the right person in custody, and we'll be moving very promptly into impaneling a grand jury to hear the evidence in this case.
A teenage girl was found stabbed and laying on the side of the road in 2014. Law&Crime's Jesse Weber looks into how this shocking crime unfolded in his new show, Prime Crime.
Hey, thanks, Brian. Coming up on Prime Crime, we revisit the infamous Slender Man case. A 12-year-old girl is brutally stabbed by her classmates in the name of a fictional horror character. Crazy story. Everyone followed it across the nation. And we're going to break down the crime scene, we'll get into the motivations, and we're really digging into the shocking statements made by these girls, not only in court, but in their police interrogation tapes.
I said, okay, how would we do that? And she said, we have to kill Bella.
Okay. Okay, and do you know why she said that? Like, why she said that?
Because we had to supposedly prove ourselves worthy to Slender.
And we ask, is it possible that these attackers could be out free living amongst the public? Tune in at Law and Crime.
We'll make sure to do that. Thank you very much, Jesse. Still ahead on Law and Crime Daily, could a $10 million judgment be overturned? But first, a Nevada man accused of murdering his sixth wife makes his first. A Nevada man who's getting a new trial for the murder of his wife and alleged hitman is back in court. As Law and Crime's Genette Levy tells us, he's ready for his new round of legal battles.
This was Thomas Randolph's first time in a Clark County courtroom since being granted a new trial last month. He wore a mask and a long ponytail. He spoke briefly but directly.
I want a speedy trial. I want it done now.
Randolph is accused of murdering his sixth wife, Sharon, at their Las Vegas home in 2008, and then killing the hitman he hired to kill her, Mike Miller. He had been sentenced to death for the killings, but the Nevada Supreme Court ordered a new trial, finding the jury should not have heard testimony about other acts evidence, such as the 1986 death of one of Randolph's wives, Becky, in Utah. Randolph was acquitted in that case.
I think there's some lack of evidence that is more mind-boggling in this entire case than anything else. The prosecution really planted seeds in the Las Vegas jury for Sharon Randolph and Mike Miller that he's a serial killer. But there wasn't a lot of evidence to truly back that up.
Melissa McCarty and Kelly McLear have exclusive interviews with Randolph from Death Row for their new Killer Genes podcast.
It seems like everybody and their brother wanted to bust me for drugs. That's what the Utah case is about, the drugs and all the women I had sex with. And it's not criminal. It may be not good if you're married, but or they're married, but it's not criminal. The times were different back in the 80s.
Thomas Randolph has an answer for everything. And it's fascinating to hear. And you have to go, do you take it with a grain of salt or are you taking it as truth? And the only people that knows that truth is Thomas Randolph and those that are dead.
Prosecutors have declined comment, but are moving forward with the retrial. Thomas Randolph will be back in court on February 19th with new lawyers, and at that time, the judge could set a trial date. For Law and Crime Daily, I'm Jennifer Levy.
Back for analysis is New York City Public Defender Anna Carlsen and co-host Terri Austin. Terri, the theme of the first trial was that Randolph was a serial killer, but if the murder that he was acquitted of in that first case in '86 doesn't come in, do you think the prosecution can succeed under some different theme?
Well, yes, I think they can succeed. I think that they can even try to bring in that murder if they do it the right way. Listen, Randolph was married 6 times. 4 of his wives died. He was tried for the death of his second wife, and he was acquitted. He was then tried and convicted of, killing Sharon. That was reversed. And if they do this again, what the prosecution needs to do is focus, first of all, on the death of Sharon. There's a ton of evidence there. But second of all, if they want to get Becky's death in there, they have to tie the motive to the insurance. They have to say it was the same motive with Becky as it was with Sharon. And I think they can prevail if they do that.
Murder for money is a popular theme that does work. Anna, as a defense attorney, if you picked up this case for a retrial and, I don't know, decided to try this case with a random black Canadian from your office, how are you attacking this case?
Brian, I think there's no way this case doesn't look completely different from the first trial. I think if I were defending this case in the retrial, I mean, he even physically looks very different than he did just 3 years ago. I think what Terry said about the prosecutor trying to bring in the prior death as sort of a modus operandi, as his motive, as this is his pattern of killing his wives, I think they would have a really hard time bringing that in because he was acquitted in that other death. I think the defense would have a powerful argument that it doesn't even come in as a prior bad act. A court of law heard about whether there was a bad act by him, and they ruled there was no bad act. He was not guilty. I think this trial will look, there's no way around it, this trial will look extremely different from the first trial.
Yeah, that's a bit of a first for me. Can you get acquitted of something, but it also be considered a prior bad act? Definitely going to see how that plays out. Anna, Terry, thank you for your input. Coming up on Law and Crime Daily, an Iowa father taking his son to the state's highest court over the murder of a loved one. An inside look into the nearly 6-year legal battle next. The Iowa Supreme Court is now deciding if a son must pay his father $10 million over the murder of his mother. Chief investigative correspondent Brian Ross explains why this drama is playing out in civil court.
This is a family tragedy. Jason Carter, accused by his father, Bill Carter, of murdering his mother, Shirley Carter, in 2015.
I found Shirley on the floor. Her hands were crossed and her legs were crossed. Jason came in and I said, "Jason, look how she's laying. You don't die that way." He said, "Some son of a has robbed you and they've killed Mom."
What happened was that the criminal process was going so slowly that the father, Bill Carter, decided to take matters into his own hands. Convinced that his son was guilty of the murder, he hired his own private detectives, filed the lawsuit, and went ahead. And it was a day and a half after the verdict in the civil trial where Jason Carter was found guilty. A day and a half later, that the criminal charges were then filed, and he was arrested on the charge of first-degree murder.
I'm sure to people who were watching, Jason Carter said all the right things. But we also know that that financial stress was problematic because he told Terrace Hoke about it, that his credit line being delayed was something they talked about. So we have all this pressure, and something happens. There's an altercation, and Shirley Carter dies as a result. There's only 2 people in this world who know what happened on June 19, 2015, and one of them is dead, and the other one's sitting behind me.
We, the jury, find Jason Carter not guilty.
Jason Carter was found not guilty in a criminal trial, but he was found guilty in a civil trial. Now his lawyers ask for a new trial from the Iowa Supreme Court.
I don't think either party would agree to any kind of settlement. Jason would certainly never agree to anything that required him to admit that he murdered Shirley, because he didn't. And Bill Carter seems convinced that Jason was responsible, even despite the quick acquittal that we achieved in the criminal court. I don't think settlement is a possibility for either of these parties.
After you were found not guilty, was there any new effort to find who was in fact guilty, since you were cleared by the jury?
We've asked the local prosecutor and law enforcement to look into the people, that should be held responsible for this, or the people that we believe are responsible. and we were told that nothing would ever happen. No one was going to look into anything.
When we come back, attorneys for Jason Carter ask a civil judge to hear evidence of other possible suspects, why they're still fighting to clear his name, and why his own father insists he's guilty. Welcome back. The Iowa Supreme Court is now considering the appeal of a farmer criminally acquitted of his mother's murder, but found civilly liable. Attorneys for Jason Carter claim evidence was purposely withheld from them during the original civil trial.
The record in front of you requires vacation of judgment for 3 central reasons. First, because Jason Carter did not have access to the evidence that was available and known to the plaintiffs at the time of the civil trial. Second, because the evidence that was unknown to Jason at the time of the civil trial was both admissible and reasonably would have changed the outcome of the civil trial. Third, because the district court erred by allowing the state to provide targeted, seemingly inculpatory evidence to the plaintiffs, and also by refusing to continue the trial so that Jason Carter would have had access to the exculpatory evidence that existed at that time. We are asking this court to reverse and remand this case back to the district court for new trial.
Attorneys for Carter's father, Bill Carter, say that that claim is not true and that evidence shows Jason is guilty.
We are now in the 6th year of an unimaginable tragedy for a husband and a father, Bill Carter. We are now in the 4th year of trying to get finality for the jury verdict that was returned in this case. The evidence overwhelmingly demonstrates that Jason Carter killed his mother. And it does so in a way that excludes almost all of the evidence that is not impeaching or cumulative in support of both the first and the second petitions to vacate, because the petitions to vacate both depend, although there are lots and lots of names referenced, on the same fundamental proposition, that some stranger burglar or burglars surprised or were surprised by Shirley Carter in her house, and in a panic, somebody shot Shirley Carter. However, at the trial of this case, both sides called extensively credentialed and experienced crime scene reconstruction experts. Both sides' experts agreed that the burglary robbery scene in the house was faked, and that the thing that you could infer from that was Shirley knew her killer.
On rebuttal, attorneys for Jason Carter say they only learned of a witness who implicates other suspects after the civil trial.
The new evidence could be used either to attack the investigation of law enforcement or for the purpose of showing the culpability of other suspects. It's incorrect, I believe, that evidence need to be presented at the motion to vacate in its admissible form at trial. At trial, those witnesses would need to be called, but I believe Harrington shows that that information just needs to be presented in a way that shows it could lead or would lead to admissible evidence. And Your Honor, certainly, for example, if Charity Roush was called and she said, I heard specifically a confession, it was consistent, it said they were in the middle of a burglary, that they were interrupted, that they'd gotten into some of the drawers, and that Shirley Carter was shot twice. Those statements made without any knowledge of what the testimony was at trial, certainly that could be used to show that there was culpability of other suspects.
Back with me for analysis is Anna Carlsen and Terri Austin. Anna, you heard it there. They talked about what was missing from the first civil case, that they had asked for more time, they'd asked for more investigation, and when it came to the criminal case, when they had all of that, it went in their favor. They got an acquittal. What do you think that if they're armed with those fully developed facts from the criminal case, do you think that if they got us another civil trial, they would fare better?
Boy, Brian, this team is so powerful, and you'll notice Jason Carter has the same lawyers representing him in the civil retrial that he had representing him in the criminal trial. You saw the same woman, Allison Canny, I'm sorry, I don't know how to pronounce her name. She's fantastic. You saw her making both arguments, embracing him when he got the verdict. I think they're going to be incredibly well-versed in the facts from the criminal trial, and I absolutely think they have a better shot in the civil trial here. The standard of proof in a civil trial is much lower than the standard of proof in a criminal trial. In a criminal trial, you need to prove your case beyond a reasonable doubt, and the prosecution couldn't do that. I can't see how they think they're going to prove to the Iowa standard in a civil trial, which is a preponderance of the evidence, slightly more than 50%.
All right, Anna, I agree with you, but Terry, you're the civil expert in this panel of public defenders. Is this going to work for Jason Carter, or will the original ruling stand?
I think the original ruling will stand. My educated guess is that Jason Carter will lose this motion. As my Columbia Law School professor used to say, too bad, so sad. He had a civil case and he lost that case. Now he has a criminal case. And the point is, one has nothing to do with the other. As Anna said, there is definitely a different standard of proof. It's two different burdens, two different outcomes. And what happens in the civil trial has nothing to do with the criminal trial unless, there's reversible error or new information.
All right, thank you both. And thank you for joining us here on Law and Crime Daily. We'll see you next time as we discuss justice in America.